Howdy! Welcome to Your Average Bear Gaming. Today, I'll build Gaunt's Ghosts. It's a new kit, it's gorgeous, it's detailed, and there's minimal mold lines and flashing. I think you're going to enjoy it. Do you want more details? Then you know what to do. I'm going to do a little bit of a build video. I don't usually do build videos anymore, since it seems like people don't really like going over this. But this is a new kit, and I thought maybe as I build, I can talk a little bit about the build quality, etc., etc. Since this kit is probably new to a lot of people, there might be some interest in having a closer look and a closer review on the fit and finish of the model. If I'm wrong, you'll let me know with, not viewing it, but if you're interested in this sort of style of video, let me know in the comments, and I'll adjust from there. So here is the instruction manual. It's actually very, very pretty. The whole model, if you didn't catch my unboxing, it's in the video unboxing cool stuff playlist. So I've already gone over indeed kind of a bit of a detail on the model, the parts themselves. It's a really detailed kit. I mean, not super detailed like you would expect a Space Marine detail level, but for Imperial Guard, Astra Militarum, for you young folks, it's really detailed and it's very pretty. So I'm going to put these together, and I should point out that these actually I should point out, these use the normal Imperial Guard Astra Militarum 28mm base. I kind of expected them to be on a bigger base, but they're not. So here's the package. I'm going to start with the very first character. Appropriately enough, it's Commissar Gaunt. Alright, here is my built Commissar Gaunt. He looks pretty good. It was relatively few pieces. It was the front and back of the torso, one arm, and one head. That really was it. And they don't fit together in the way that most Imperial Guard will fit, but I think we all expected that. This is a character model, and it's in the newer Games Workshop style. So, like the cape and the arm are going to be connected sometimes. Some of the things are going to be kind of a single part. It's mostly oriented front and back halves of the model as opposed to top and bottom. But apparently it allows them to do some pretty fancy posing and sculpting, so I'm not going to complain. In terms of the quality of the build quality, it's fine. The pieces fit together relatively straightforward. There's nothing particularly tricky. I mean, like the arm will fit into the torso, kind of in between the front and the back, so there's like a little notch. There's a little notch that you have to get in there, but it seems pretty straightforward. Now, that may change once I glue it down. I'm not going to glue it down because painting the underside of capes when they're glued to the model is notoriously finicky. Let's call it finicky. In terms of customization options, there's not a ton, but you could get away with a couple of things if you really wanted to. I mean, you'd have to be okay with messing with this already really pretty model. But I'm thinking the weapons are probably a pretty easy way of sprucing this guy up a bit. So he's got the tiny little human-sized bolt pistol, which is impressive for Imperial Guard, but not impressive where bolters are concerned. You might want to consider, I think that's something I'm going to play with, is giving him an oversized bolt pistol. He's a commissar. It'll be fine. I have a few bolt pistols left over from the Space Marines veteran Vanguard something or the other, the dudes with jetpacks. So I've got a couple of spare bolt pistols, and they're a little bit more ornate. They have some decorations on them, and I think I'm leaning towards replacing this guy with one of those. They don't strike me as that much bigger, although if they are much bigger, then I probably won't. So something to think about. The same kit includes a bunch of really cool looking chain swords. If I can't use them all, perhaps I can use one of them here. They look about the same size, so it's not like this guy's going to be walking around with an oversized chainsword. Not that Games Workshop's all that great with scale, but, you know, something to think about if you want to make them your own. You're not going to be able to do a ton with the pose, unless you're into sculpting, doing stuff like that. I am not. That is not my cup of tea, and so I'm going to leave it as is. I will say the base seems an odd choice. This model is really cramped on this 28mm base. It could use a little bit more space. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen with that guy that's standing on the tree, but we'll see. Yeah, on to the next model. As I was building this, I ran into something I hadn't seen before. Now, that isn't because I've seen every single new Games Workshop model release, but you'll notice that the head's a little funky. Well, it turns out his hair, part of his hair is separate. So I think it goes kind of like... it's going to be kind of a pain to do it correctly. This thing just wants to jump out. So even dry fitting is kind of challenging. Yeah, I'm going to glue this on because I will lose this part if I don't make it permanent right now. Alright, so there it is. It's a really small detail. It's going to be really easy to get wrong, so you have to, pay attention and be patient. And even if you're patient and take care, you might get it wrong still. And if you keep having to fumble around with it, you're going to get like plastic glue gunk all over the hair. It isn't the end of the world, since this guy's probably sporting a rough and tumble look. It's a pretty model, so you want to get this right. Was it worth having two pieces? I don't know. It was really finicky. So here's this guy, Colonel Clem Korbeck. He's pointy. Yeah, I mean, in terms of cost-benefit, effort to enjoyment, that hairpiece probably doesn't need to exist. However, in terms of the rule of cool, it's actually pretty cool. Which of the two wins? Well, Games Workshop obviously decided the rule of cool should win here, and I can't say I disagree, finicky as it was. Otherwise, getting this thing together wasn't all that challenging. Like Commissar Gaunt before him, there's not a ton of mold lines. You have to look really hard to find some mold lines to scrape off, so I'm really happy with that. Let's call it build quality, even though it's probably manufacturing quality. The other thing that is pretty neat about this is that Games Workshop seems to have taken pains to make the attachment points make sense, so that they didn't end up any place unnecessary. Having said that, they weren't entirely successful, but that's because this model is just full of curves. There's just no flat, angled, hidden spaces really to attach the part to the sprue. So you're going to end up with a few things. And some of those places are like here on the arm. I think that there's one right on the bicep that is really hard to scrape off without damaging the bicep. Could they have picked a better place? I don't know. There's not a ton of really good places to put a connector to the sprue. So, having said all that, I think they did a really good job. It shows that with these new models, they're taking pains to reduce the incidence of mold lines. I think that pays dividends for modelers and hobbyists alike. Cool looking model though. Next up, Major Elim Rain. Who knows? Let's give him a shot. Elim Rain is done. He had many of the same features as the other ones in terms of build quality and fit. The one thing I will say is that the torso does not fit the way you think it does. Dry fit all day with this guy. The front and back halves are kind of off-center, and you almost need this front piece. This is kind of a loose part of the cloak that goes onto it. It's a little tougher than you think. It's not actually hard, it's just not what you're used to, so it kind of messes with your brain to make it feel harder than it is. Once you figure it out, like where the front and the back go, because it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of off-center. The back and the front are kind of offset. But yeah, once you figure it out, it fits, and it fits well. So there's the guy. He's probably the one of these troopers that actually fits well on his model. All the other ones are kind of big for their model. We'll do Sniper Lane Larkin next. Should be cool. I remember liking his character a lot. Sniper is a little harder than I anticipated. You'll see this this back half and this front half. This front half has an arm, and so I'm attaching it to the body, but it's not actually going to fit like that. The way this goes together, you have to get all three pieces on at the same time, and it's hard to kind of make sense of it from the instructions. At least it was for me. But all three pieces fit together kind of at the same time. Pardon the... Oh my goodness. I'm going to need some more of this putty. Yeah, but it fits in a very particular way. And I'm not 100% sure I got it right. So this arm sticks out of the cloak, because he's holding his rifle there. But this scabbard is sticking out of the cloak and right next to his boot. It's hard to tell on the instructions. It almost looks like it's tucked in the cape for some reason. It's not. So just keep in mind the scabbard's going to be sticking out of the cape almost parallel to his left leg. Yeah, that one's a toughie. Yeah. Good luck with that one. Here's Larkin, our sniper. This is another model that it really just barely fits on this 28mm stand. Yeah, it probably would have been better to go with 32mm. Gives them a little bit of breathing room. It's going to be tough to base these as well, but once you get this front part together, the gun is fairly straightforward. It tucks into a little corner here on the shoulder-ish kind of elbow. It's going to be a little tricky, I think, to get the arm and the gun to line up with each other, because the arm is attached to the scabbard. There's a weird little leverage that happens there, so if you need to move the arm down, the scabbard comes up and rubs up against the cloak. That's going to be... It's going to take some doing, I think. But he's a really cool looking model. Minimal mold lines. There was one kind of big one here on the scope that I didn't like, but I was able to get it off. I think most of the mold lines so far have been manageable. So just know this is going to be a tricky one to build. So dry fit, and then, cross your fingers as you're gluing. Well, maybe not as you're gluing, but, beforehand. Here is Try Again Bragg. I don't remember much about this character from the novels, but he's a really cool looking model. It was a little more straightforward to fit. I didn't encounter anything that was particularly nasty or problematic. There's a scabbard here. It's going to kind of interfere a little bit, but it's not as weird. Like it doesn't connect to the arms in any way. So pretty much fits. the way he's supposed to. I did notice that this guy had a few more mold lines than the other guys, so I just kind of scraped him off and he's fine. And also, he just really doesn't fit on this base. But he looks really cool. This might be my favorite one of these guys so far. Just the idea of this guy manhandling this huge cruiser of the weapon. Gorgeous. Yeah. All right, off to our next and final. I think it's our last guy, right? What do we have? Sergeant Owen McCall. Oh, he's the guy on that huge tree. That should be interesting. Here is Sergeant Owen McCall. He, for some reason, was the more intricate of the 6 models included in this kit. And I'm not exactly sure why. Like, he's not the most important member of this group. That would be Commissar Gaunt. However, you can't exactly have Commissar Gaunt hanging out in a tree, and so this is clearly the centerpiece. So they added a bit more detail to it. So like that scarf thing, it's a part you add on there. You have a choice of heads, which you don't have with any other models. So there's this hooded version and a version where the hood is kind of drawn down around the neck, and you add the face to it. When all is said and done, given the option of hood up and hood down, I almost always go with hood up. Gives me Jedi vibes for some reason. And this one was fairly straightforward to build. Again, really runs over his base. And I'm suspecting that this is part of the plan. Like, the model kind of flows over the base in some meaningful way. It makes them more substantial. It makes the storage a bit more of a problem. But whatevs. This is Sergeant McCall. He looks really cool. Let's take a look at all of them kind of as a group. So here are my impressions of this model kit. Obviously, as a newbie, I've only been doing this for less than a year. It'll be a year in October, so I'm not an expert at this by any means, but I'm approaching this as kind of someone who's new to the hobby and who doesn't know all the tips and tricks to get the most out of your model kit. So from that perspective, I can say this wasn't a bad build. It was relatively simple. It was relatively easy. There was relatively little mold lines to scrape off. The connection points were, while not always well positioned, they were probably as well positioned as they could be, given the nature of these models. So yeah, it was a quick build. It took me, I don't know, maybe about an hour of cutting stuff off sprue and scraping mold lines off and putting things together. Obviously, it's a little more finicky when you're gluing stuff down, and so some of the problems that might happen with this model kit might jump out at us, or might jump out at me when I actually glue stuff down. Won't do that until I get a coat of paint on most of this. So there's that. I will say, man, this was, if not necessarily a fun build, it was a pleasant build. It wasn't fun in the sense that you didn't get to choose a lot of different options. You didn't get to pose. So these are basically tiny little statues. You get the pose you get, and that's the end. Contrasts with other kits that I've built, both Death Watch kill teams, or even the Kadean Heavy Weapon Squad. I had fun with that one. Now, obviously, I filmed that one, but I've posted it to YouTube, but it hasn't run yet. I'm spacing these out once a week because I have a full-time job and I want to put something out every week. So this will show up before my Kadeans. I've started to do some Imperial Guard Astra Militarum troops. You just haven't seen them yet because I haven't published them yet. So they'll get there. I'm going to use a different paint scheme for these guys. Anyway, stuff about painting, we'll talk about that in the next video. So this will be my next project. I don't remember having any other thing coming from Games Workshop, so I can go back to my regularly scheduled programming. Yeah, it was a good build, good quality, decent fit so far as I can tell right now. Like I said, things might change when I use actual plastic cement, but for now, it's good. I will say this is going to present not a serious challenge for painting. It certainly didn't present a serious challenge for building, which honestly, these should not be challenging to build. This was an interesting kit to build, but there's a lot of details here that you're going to have to pay attention to when you paint. Particularly, there's lots and lots of cloaking, lots of cloaks. So there'll be plenty of space here to do some shading, maybe to do some blending if you're good at that. So this should be a good one to complete later on. So yeah, if you're interested in Gaunt's Ghosts, this is a cool kit to do. I don't know how well they're going to be on the tabletop, but these are pretty. I don't know that it matters. Pick them up if you're a fan of Imperial Guard. Pick them up if you're a fan of Gaunt's Ghosts. Pick them up if you're looking for a painting challenge. It's a cool kit. I'm glad I got it. It's going to be a nice part of my collection. I'm looking forward to painting it. Yeah. Thanks for watching, everybody. I appreciate your viewership. If you enjoyed this video, if you got something out of it, would you consider giving me a like or a subscribe? It helps the YouTube algorithm recommend this to other people who might also enjoy this video and videos like it. At any rate, you have a wonderful evening. Be nice to yourselves.